Hello everyone, welcome to Next IAS. I am Raj Rai. Today we are going to have a discussion on case study section of General Studies paper 4 along with moral thinkers and philosophers from India and the world based on the recently conducted civil service mains examination. So, in that examination, first question you might say from the moral thinkers and philosophers from India and the world was question number 3rd, which specifically asking about the relevancy of the teachings of Gautam Buddha today and why. Now, in such kind of question, the better one in terms of approaching this question is to first highlight what are the problems which is faced by the world today and how Buddha's teaching could come as a rescue to solve or at least deal with such kinds of problems. So, in the introductory remarks, you may mention that present societies are going through various kinds of problems and various kinds of troubles. For example, we are in the middle of COVID-19 pandemics, which has created entire world into almost a lockdown stage. Similarly, there is always conflict which foment other kinds of basically dissidence, other kinds of basically violence repercussion in countries due to various economics issues which are raised due to COVID-19 pandemics. So, it is believed that due to this economic slowdown, many countries are engaging into violence against each other. The latest example of Azerbaijan and Armenia conflict, including India-China conflict and skirmish at the border region. Likewise, we also observed that rising religious intolerance in different parts of the world. So, again, we have seen the France terrorist attack where Charlie Hebdo basically was targeted by many extremists and it was resulted into beheading of one school teacher Samuel Paty, or church attack, or Bangalore riot, or Malmo religious conflicts in Sweden. Similarly, we are also observing that during small portion of time when lockdowns were imposed, environment was basically improving, but later on it was observed that it also again started into similar manner degrading. Likewise, there is rise in incidences of corruption. So, all these things are faced by world in present time and we have to identify how Buddha's teaching is going to be providing us solution related to such kinds of issues. So, outcome of all this will be that COVID-19 has created various kinds of conflicts externally also as well as internally also. We observed that there is something called as shadow pandemics also started. Shadow pandemics meaning rise of domestic violence due to the mental pressure, due to mental anxiety occurring within the mind of people resulted into domestic violence cases during COVID-19 lockdown. Likewise, there was alienation among the many people. Now, alienation occurred due to many reasons. One is that everyone started believing that this is going to be the end of the world. There is a kind of situation of normlessness where people do not find any bright futures for them as well as their families. Likewise, there is also creating the feeling of unrest among the people, especially the youth. Likewise, you can say that many others problems or outcomes of these problems are also visible in present time. Now, in the present time, how Buddha's teaching is going to provide us a desired lesson to deal with such kind of problems. So, you can say that Panchashila idea of Buddha, where he mentioned about no killing, no stealing, no sexual misconduct, no lying and no consumption of intoxicant, can give us a fair idea about how to manage ourselves in this difficult times, where no killing is primarily emphasizing on respect of every life, whether it is human or animal life. Likewise, no stealing is about respecting others' property. So, due to this violent conflict, others not only life but properties are also destroyed. So, this teaching of Buddha is more relevant. Then, no sexual misconduct, meaning respect for our pure nature. Likewise, no lying, related to respect for honesty and respect for clear mind in terms of non-consumption of intoxicant. So, these are very important basically in the times of COVID-19 pandemic. Likewise, Buddha has also given in his teaching eightfold path. Now in this eightfold path, I presume it has been taught in many classes as well as you have studied that in your basically preparation, but just for a revision, Buddha has given this eightfold path that stand for right understanding, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right efforts, right mindfulness and right concentration. Now all this eightfold path had its own relevance towards the present circumstances. For example, Buddha also mentioned that desire is the root of all evil. So again, unnecessary desire for material upliftment is not basically going to give us the satisfaction, and everyone has experienced this. Many people who have earned various basically resources are becoming futile because everyone was put under halt and everyone is in same situation. Likewise, detachment from greed, desire, ignorance and hatred is what the need of hour today, where everyone required each other's support to go through such kind of situations or crisis. Likewise, eightfold path revolving around wisdom, that is right understanding, right intentions and other ethical conducts including right speech and right action along with right livelihood, will show us the right way to conduct ourselves, to manage ourselves. Likewise, meditation, which is emphasized under right efforts, mindfulness and concentration, also keep our anxiety level under control or keep it down. Right understanding and right intention can open the path for knowledge and the liberation of people from ignorance. So many people do not have much awareness about many things, specifically this COVID-19 pandemics, which was new. Many people unknowingly or knowingly engage into conflicting with other without much reasons or much knowledge. So again, if they got the idea that there is no outcome of all this kind of conflict, they will not engage into such things. Likewise, right speech can liberate basically people from the sense of hatredness, and that should restrict their sense of commitment to violence also. Right action and livelihood can liberate the society from corruption and ensure the food and water security, and will enhance the economic opportunity and the employment, giving way to prosperity. We all observed that there was a migrant crisis just followed by the COVID-19 lockdown, especially in India. Now, if people would have been driven by right action and right livelihood, they would have come forward, and many people did so also, to help those people who are in dire need. Likewise, right efforts, mindfulness and concentration ensure mental peace and enrich moral and cultural value. Now, usually what happens at the time of crisis, there is a situation of normlessness, there is situation of rulelessness, there is situation of meaninglessness. People started questioning that what is the purpose of this life. People started questioning about their utility in this particular life, and this created lot of negative emotion, might lead to suicidal tendencies. So, if a person is in right efforts, mindfulness and concentration, such negative emotion would be under check, and it will be very beneficial for those people who are having this sense of anxiety or perturbedness. So, Buddhist teaching include compassion, calmness and composure, joy among the human, and they can help maintain sustainable balance between man and nature. So, related to the environmental degradation, it is very important that there should be harmony between the humans as well as nature in terms of their activities. So, Buddhist teaching emphasize on that related to compassion, not only toward the living human beings, but also toward the animal or the nature. And again, this will give us direction toward more emphasis on sustainable development, which is development not just keeping in present need, but also keeping in mind the needs of future generation. Likewise, Buddhist teaching can transform the society into their better and more human forms, as reflected by Tibetan leader Dalai Lama. He mentioned that as 20th century is more infamous for kind of war and violence, now there is a need for people to see that 21st century should be the century of peace and dialogue. So, this basically give us fair idea about the relevance of teaching of Buddha. So, in such kind of question, specifically you have to address that what is the present problem and how Buddhist teachings and Buddhist thought can provide some direction, some basically light to go through such kinds of problem and deal with those problems. So again, that will be better way to address such kind of question. Next question was about the quotation or the statements issued by some moral thinkers and philosophers, and again we have to interpret and we have to basically analyze its meaning to us. Again, this is a personalized kind of question. They are not much bothered, examiner is not much bothered about the exact meaning, but how this statement or this basically quotation means to you. And here you can give various example from your life also to elaborate what this quotation means to you in your individual capacity also. So that brings some of your personality traits in your answer, which is going to be reflected to the examiner also. So again, first question is condemn none. If you can strengthen out the helping hand to do so, if not, fold your hands, bless your brothers and let them go their own way. Swami Vivekananda. Now, this is kind of typical thing we observed in many basically instances, many cases, where people have developed this habit of liberal criticism of anything and everything without looking into the hard work efforts made by those who are involved in particular event. So again, this is something which is creating a negative emotion among those who are behind certain action or at least attempting something in society. And due to this condemnation, many people, because of this fear of this condemnation or criticism, were very reluctant to take any action also. So it also leads to an basically paralysis on part of taking action of the people. So policy paralysis or other stuff might follow in such situation. Now again, the problem with criticism is not that it is dissuading people to do an action, but again it generates a negative emotion. So problem with criticism is that it challenges our sense of values. Now criticism implies judgment, and believe me, no one would like to be judged in front of other, whosoever that person may be. So Daniel Goleman, who is famously known for his emotional intelligence theory, argued that we all recoil from feeling of being judged. So threat to our esteem in the eye of other is so potent that they can literally feel like threat to their own survival. Nobody would like to take criticism which is undue, which could be avoided. Many people link it with their esteem, that how dare this person had basically criticized me. It is directly associated with my esteem and also associated with my survival, and that has been come under criticism or question. So that is something which is what the problem which is associated with criticism or condemnation. Classic example we find among the parents who unnecessarily criticize their children and again react to their misstep with harshness and judgment. Now not only this dissuade their child to take any action, but also restrict them to even make mistakes. Now making mistake is one step of learning, but undue criticism, condemnation will dissuade a child also, if parents are engaged into such undue criticism, that they would not resort to any kind of action, which is something which is going to be adverse in their life in future, where they decide to not come under criticism and not do anything which is something which is offering some challenges. Again, Stephen Covey say, seek first to understand. So that is exactly what Vivekananda is also referring to when he says, if you cannot stretch out a helping hand, basically just bless the brother and let them go. So that is what Stephen Covey also say, that first seeks to understand before having any critical approach. Now recent COVID-19 crisis had shown various kinds of examples where many of the health workers, sanitation workers, corona warriors are basically endangering their life to rescue the humanity from this COVID-19 crisis, to overcome society from this kind of shock. They were making their lot of efforts, but even in that situation we observed that there were instances where the health worker were being attacked by the people in society whose welfare only is looked by the health worker and professionals. So again, this kind of thing comes under the condemnation of the act which is done by the people who is engaged into violence against the health worker. Again, that is something which is avoided, which should be avoided. If you cannot basically come to assist them, associate your basically help to them, it's better to let them go rather than engaging into violence against them. Likewise, condemning and criticizing is the most easiest thing in this world. If you are not held accountable of anything, you are free to criticize everyone and anyone, you will be getting certain kind of pleasure out of this kind of activity. Now, this will lead to cynicism in the mind of people as well as some sections in the society, which is actually not good, not only for society but also for those individuals. So, this should be avoided. Likewise, helping hand and supporting would make a lot of difference than just mere criticism. Even if that is difficult, it's way better to encourage and wish people luck. If you cannot do any help to the people, it is better not to put hurdle in their path and just wish them luck and again encourage them to do such kind of thing. Now, ridiculing and dissuading them is not going to help neither you nor that person. So, as per Dalai Lama, our prime purpose in this life is to help other, and if you can't help them, at least don't hurt them. So, again the statement begin with a quotation by Swami Vivekananda, and again we will try to interpret. You can bring lot of examples from your personal basically life also to explain this kind of statement. So, again this is how we are going to deal with such kind of questions. Next is about the best way to find ourselves is to lose ourselves in service of other. Now, again it is said that people are so busy these days that they forgot that they have some individual existence, and because of their busy life and busy schedule, they are having this problems associated with alienation, frustration, anxiety, tension and other basically mental disorders they might basically suffer from. This is because in this life they have occupied too much, which lead to forgetting their own self, which is something which is not basically supposed to be happening. So, in that situation you can apply this Gandhian thought by saying, by meaning that best way to find yourself is to lose yourself in service of other. Now, this statement actually refers to that every person had their own virtues and vices. Now, a person who had virtues like goodness, honesty, love, empathy, compassion and contain vices like greed, selfishness can be truly human and come nearer to the ultimate. So, for inculcating these values, we need to inculcate in ourselves thoughts, behavior and actions. Now, example of this is that we become brave by doing brave things. Likewise, by losing ourselves in the service of other, we inculcate values like love, compassion, sacrifice, etc. and shed our basically vices like greed, selfishness, etc. and realize that God is in every human being. That is why Vivekananda also said that service to humanity is service to God only. So, once you serve human being, it is as good as saying that you are serving God. Likewise, many examples were there where Mother Teresa, Gandhiji and other great social reformers have sacrificed and let their life lost in the service of other and devoted their whole life in the service of mankind. So, this is something which is the true meaning of life. Now, everyone as a human being has this temptation to live for themselves, but again a true human being is one who not only just live for himself or herself, but also for others. That only makes meaning to the life. Then you can see that there was no compulsion, there was no reason for billionaires to donate or engage into philanthropic activities. But by engaging into such philanthropic activities, they try to basically understand the problems which are associated with other by losing themselves into the service of other. So, we have seen that many billionaires like Bill Gates, Warren Buffett, Mark Zuckerberg had donated the majority income of theirs to the philanthropic activities. Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation were engaged into supporting financially to the people during the time of COVID. Warren Buffett and Mark Zuckerberg have donated majority of their income for the philanthropic activities in different acts. So, again this will give some meaning to their life. They have bring certain difference in the life of the people, and that is what supposed to be appreciated. Not only they are doing it as a form of charity, but also this is their way to find themselves when they lose themselves into the service of other, right? Now, we can have various examples from India also, where we observed that various celebrities from Hindi movie industries as well as the sports, along with many bureaucrats leaving their prosperous career and become a social worker. This gives them more satisfaction than working in big offices and serving the billionaires and clients which are having high income. That give them less satisfaction than working for the upliftment of poor section. Now, this idea of Gandhi also gave rise to various other thoughts which Gandhi later on developed. For example, one idea which lead to Gandhi's belief in trusteeship principle. Now, trusteeship principle is based on Gandhian thought that every owner of a property or any kind of basically income generating activity, be it agriculture or industry, should consider themselves as trustee. Now, trustee are who? Trustee are those group of people who keep something under trust of the members of those basically trust. Again, trustees are those who are given responsibility to manage something. Now, their only objective is to manage. Now, every owner had this thought in the mind that whatever income they are generating because of their property, because of their industry, because of their agricultural land belongs to them. Gandhi says, don't behave in that manner, rather start behaving like as if you are trustee of this property, where you are given this task to manage this property, manage this basically entity, and whatever profit is basically generated, taking some share for your survivalistic need, everything you should basically share with the society. That is what actually the role of trustee should be. So, this idea is a non-violent approach to deal with problems associated with inequality in the society, to deal with problem associated with poverty in the society, to deal with problem associated with apathy in the society, caste discrimination, gender discrimination in the society. So, if people who have income, ownership of resources start behaving like a trustee, then they will focus more not on enhancement of their personal wealth, but for prosperity of entire society. From same idea, Gandhi derived his basically vision for 7 social sins also. So, for Gandhi, basically 7 social sins include politics without principle, wealth without work, pleasure without conscience, knowledge without character, commerce without morality, then science without humanity, and worship without sacrifice. So, these idea emanates from this particular statement, where outcome or objective of every human life is to basically lose themselves in service of other in order to find their true basically meaning in their life. So, this is what Gandhian thought. And again, you can say that when you serve other, this notion of yourself or you or what we call as I are not come in between. Rather, we started feeling that there is no difference between us and the other people whom we are serving, and this will develop the ideas or the emotions of sympathy, connection and solidarity with those group of people. So, again this thought is in consonance with utilitarian view also. Utilitarian view suggests that you should take those decisions as ethical decisions which provide maximum happiness for maximum number of people. Now, when you lose yourself in the service of other, that is going to provide maximum happiness to the people and also to you. So, this is in consonance with utilitarian thought process along with deontological ethics of Gandhi and basically the Gandhian way, where duty is emphasized over the means to perform those duties. So, this is how you are going to elaborate on this statement. You can bring some of the examples from your personal life also if it is relevant to be put over here, right. Next basically statement was, a system of morality which is based on relative emotional value is mere illusion, a thoroughly vulgar conception which has nothing sound in it and nothing true. Socrates. Now, the meaning or the essence of this statement is Socrates is arguing that emotional value system which is relative is not something which is sustainable. So, it is referring to the ethical relativism. Now, ethical relativism is a theory that holds that morality is relative to the norms of one's culture. That is, whether the action is right and wrong depends on the moral norms of the society in which it is practiced. For example, if you are living in America, and if you are consuming beef, that is not something which is immoral for a person who stayed in America. But if the same thing occur in India, it is considered as immoral. Similarly, you may find that consumption of alcohol or liquor is something which is not considered as immoral in America, but the same thing would be considered as immoral or unethical in Islamic nations or Arab countries. Similarly, women covering of the face is considered as highly moral and ethical act in Arabian countries as well as the Islamic nation, which is not considered as basically immoral or moral in America. So, again this shows us a clear picture. What is considered as moral in one culture or society may be considered as immoral and basically in other society or culture. So, that is what example of the relative emotional value, which is an example of ethical relativism. Now, Socrates clearly mentioned that one should not have such kind of norms in the society, and he attributes such kind of ethical relativism with vulgarity in the sense that it has no place in the present world, because it has created lot of confusion and it will justify the action based on society and not the action based on wisdom. So, again he says that wisdom is the virtue which is going to have generation of rational emotion, unlike other virtues which create irrational emotion in the form of the basically pleasure or happiness. He says that generally it is observed that due to the emotional responses, people have different basically ethical values developed. For example, it is observed that many of the vegetarians feel nauseated when they found someone consuming and cooking the non-vegetarian food, and they consider, because of this emotions, they consider that action as unethical. On the other hand, many of the non-vegetarian food consumer consider killing of animal as justified. So, these were the two different basically ethical values which varies based on the emotion of a person. Now, ethical absolutism is what Socrates has suggested, which avoid such kind of confusion. If there are ethical basically values, it must be universally followed, and you must make an attempt to have a universalistic ethical value in the form of wisdom. So, again in this you can basically mention that, as it is said that whenever you are in Rome, behave like what Roman does. So, it should not be the criteria. As per Socrates, you should also follow the concept of or ideas or virtues of ethical absolutism, where your ethics are universal whether you are staying in one place or the another, and it is not modified change as per the need of the hour, as per the place you are staying. So, this is about this particular argument raised by Socrates. Now, we will have to discuss some of the case studies which has been asked in the examination. Now, I observe that due to this lengthier nature of case study, many students might have faced this problem of time management in the examination, which is something which is quite natural. But again, we need to notice that part, that if there are lengthy case studies, their questions and solutions are not very lengthy or required much elaboration. Why? Because everything has been given in very detailed manner in the case study itself. So, following the approach we used to discuss in class, whenever we get a case study, it is pertinent for us to summarize or to present a brief overview about what is given in that case study in as less number of points or words as possible to give a clear picture to an examiner. Now, put yourself into the shoe of an examiner. You will appreciate that if someone is making your job easier by summarizing the essence of case study in few words before you, it will be quite easier for you also to evaluate. Same thing you have to do here. Now, this case study is about a bureaucrat who is basically known for his honesty and reputation of forthrightness. Again, he is posted in the finance ministry as the head of budget division. Now, budget division role is to allocate the budget based on optimum utilization of the resources and the need of the society. So, again the policy makers formulate certain guideline on the basis of which they used to allocate budget, where some important activities for welfare and development has to be balanced. Now, in this situation, his department is presently busy in organizing this budgetary session and support to the state, because there is going to be election in the end of this year for 4 of the states which basically are going to have this election. Now, this year annual budget allotted 8300 crores to National Housing Scheme. Again, National Housing Scheme is a kind of welfare scheme which is going to be sponsored by the central government, and again it is going to have houses constructed for the weaker sections of the society. It is given in the case study that 775 crore has been already drawn for NHS till the month of June. Now, National Housing Scheme is for construction of houses for the welfare weaker sections of the society. Then they come up with an idea that Ministry of Commerce had basically proposal for setup of special economic zone in one of the southern region of the country, where they are supposed to expect that it will generate more employment and development initiatives along with boosting of export. Now, after 2 years of detailed discussion, because this discussion was going on, finally this cabinet, union cabinet has approved their proposal, and again process for land acquisition has initiated. Now, since this is a project which has recently been approved, it required immediate financial support or funding for land acquisition and other things to set up a special economic zone. On the other hand, there was also a leading public sector undertaking which was involved in the setting up of natural gas processing plant in the country for 18 months, and that has got the approval, and there was already global bidding going on, and this gas project processing plant is important for ensuring the regional gas grid. Now, land was already there in possession of this PSUs, global bidding has been done, and one of the player has won this global bidding, and this is a multinational company named as Messrs XYZ, basically hydrocarbon. Now, they were given or allotted this project, and the first tranche of payment we have to made to them by the month of December. Now, this is given to you. So far what has been given, that there is a person Rajesh Kumar who is the head of budget section, and again they are allocating the budget to different departments, different basically programs, and in that scenario they have allocated already 8300 crore to the National Housing Scheme, for which 775 crore has been already drawn, right. Now, along with that there was a new projects come into pipeline, which is from Ministry of Commerce, Special Economic Zone, as well as a public sector undertaking which want to have a gas processing plant in northern states for regional gas grid. Now, these two projects come into picture, where one of the project is going to be implemented by a multinational company named as XYZ hydrocarbons. So, you need to pay to them first tranche of the payment in the month of December. Now, this is the entire case study. Now, Finance Ministry was asked to immediately allocate 6,000 crores for these two ventures, for these two projects. Now, it was decided, because there is always the crunch of funds. So, it was decided to have reappropriation of budget or entire amount of NHS allocation. Now, reappropriation is a process in which you have this discretion to divert fund allocated for one scheme to another scheme based on decision taken, right. So, again it is saying that entire amount of 8300 crore or whatever leftover portion is should be reappropriated to these two projects, and immediately 6000 crore should be released for these two development projects, leaving less or nothing for the National Housing Scheme. Now, again The file was forwarded to the budget department for their comments and further processing. On studying the case, you realize, or Rajesh Kumar realized, that reappropriation may cause inordinate delay to the execution of NHS. Also, a project basically much publicized in the rallies of senior politicians. Correspondingly, non-availability of finances would cause financial loss to SEZ and national embarrassment due to delay payment in the international project. So again, in this you can also have discussed this with senior. Rajesh Kumar has discussed this with senior and conveyed the politically sensitive situation of need to process it immediately. Now Rajesh Kumar realized also that diversion of fund from NHS could realize difficult question for government in parliament. So again, based on this idea, you have to discuss following case in two aspects. First is the ethical issues involved in reappropriation of fund from welfare project to the development project, and given the need for the proper utilization of public fund. Now discuss the option available to Rajesh Kumar is resigning a worthy option. Resigning of Rajesh Kumar to get rid from this kind of thing. Now this is an entire case study. It is a classic example of a case or a debate between development versus welfare. Now always there is a debate between economists whether we should go for more development initiated project which will generate benefit, and this benefits is going to trickle down and finally it will take care of the welfare schemes and welfare basically activities associated with people who are weaker section. Other says that usually trickle down effect works only in paper. In practical scenarios, trickle down effect do not provide any kind of functionality, do not provide any kind of substitution to the weaker sections help. So again, we need to have a dedicated policies and scheme for the weaker section for their welfare. So again, this was a classic dilemma. So after reading this case, what you are supposed to do? A brief overview of what are being given in the case should be summarized in basically introductory remark. So in introductory remark, you just mention the entire case study in briefest possible manner. What is that? That Rajesh Kumar is the head of budget in finance division, finance ministry. Again, he is known for his honesty and uprightness or forthrightness. Again, main issues of concern is what? NHS is a welfare scheme. Budget allocated is 8300 crore. 775 crore has been already drawn. So far, now you have left with 77,525 crores in NHS, in a scheme for, in a budget for NHS. Now, in August, we have seen in case study SEZ is going to be set up by Ministry of Commerce. It required certain land acquisition and for that process has initiated. Likewise, natural gas processing plant is to be set up in northern region where international agency, multinational company XYZ got this project, and again that first tranche of payment is to be made to this international organization in the month of December. Finance Ministry was given this directive that you should allocate 6,000 crore, and again they were also given this direction that 6,000 crore can be drawn from this leftover 7525 crores basically amount which is for national housing scheme. Again, Rajesh Kumar had discussed this with seniors and again also highlight this political sensitivity associated with this NHS scheme. Many a times it is asked to government and many politicians were announced their intention to complete this project on time, but if this amount has been reappropriated, that is going to impact the implementation of NHS. But again, if this is not reappropriated, it will dent the international image of India because it failed to pay to the multinational company its first tranche, as well as the special economic zone project can be delayed because of non-payment. So again, this is, you can say, creating troubles at both ends. Further, whether we should look for the national housing scheme or whether we should look for these two basically developmental projects. Now, in a case study, we need to identify who are going to get primarily affected by the decisions taken in this particular cases. Those are referred as stakeholders. So again, who are the stakeholders in these cases? So it is beneficiaries of national housing scheme. These are the weaker section population who thought that they might be getting houses in a subsidized manner by the government, but they do not know whether their fund is diverted or reappropriated or not, right. Similarly, the PSUs or public sector undertaking or the industry, government based industry, which is in process of land acquisition for natural gas processing plant. Not only this, multinational company XYZ Hydrocarbon is going to affect it because it has initiated the project, but again so far it has not received any payment. So, it is also a stakeholder. The southern state and the people living over there who are supposed to have the benefit when the SEZ is going to be developed over there, set up over there. Likewise, the northern state regions which is going to get benefit out of this gas processing plant because of possibility of employment generation in primary as well as the secondary manner. Then senior bureaucrats whom Rajesh Kumar has discussed and politicians of basically associated with or ministers associated with different ministries, and likewise society at large. Along with Rajesh Kumar, they are going to have a major stake in this entire situation, entire case study. Now, based on this above given fact, the ethical issues involved in this reappropriation of fund. So, we have to specifically mention the ethical issues which are going to be associated with this reappropriation of fund from a welfare based project to a development project. So, ethical issue is business involvement versus budget guideline. Now, as I mentioned earlier, there is a clear cut budget guideline which are issued, and based on this budget guideline only you allocate funds to different policies, different programs, different schemes, and if you have certain guidelines to follow, you have basically allocate budget based on those guidelines. How could you compromise on such guideline just to ensure that business environment in the country remain favorable for setting up of SEZ or for setting up of natural gas processing plant? So, how could you compromise between the budget guideline for business environment friendliness or improving your ease of doing business? Or on the other hand, in order to just improve your ease of doing business, can you violate the guideline which is issued for budget allocation? So, again this is one ethical dilemma. Second is public accountability versus international ethics. Now, again imagine that if Indian government failed to provide the first tranche of payment to XYZ Hydrocarbon, which was an international or multinational company, you can see that this got the project after 3 rounds of bidding, and again if government failed to provide them some kind of payment which was promised, it will put a very bad reputation and image of India basically is presented in a very bad manner, right, because it failed to provide its commitment and promise which made it to XYZ Hydrocarbon, and again other companies will be then very reluctant to even participate in bidding and projects in India. But there is also public accountability of government toward the weaker section, because these agencies and other development project can wait, but not poor who are waiting since many years of independence. So, you can visualize that not just in India, but across the globe this kind of scene is observed, where the weaker sections are always ignored and sidelined in the name of developmental projects and international ethics, which is how much it is justified is going to be questions. So, again this is another ethical issue, whether we should look for welfare project or whether we should look for India's international image or international ethics, right, or commitment we made to the international company. Likewise, infrastructure development of a project versus welfare project. So, again both these two projects, SEZ project as well as national gas processing plant in south and north state respectively, are developmental project. Now, development project has many potential basically potential of growth in the region in terms of employment generation, in terms of saving our exchequer which we might have used for basically getting those services and increasing the business atmosphere in those regions. So, ultimately it has many basically effects which is multidimensional. On the other hand, welfare project is also had its own importance. If you provide houses for the weaker or the poor sections of the society, they will get certain basic amenities which is their human right. Also at the same time, it will give them sense of security that they are owner of a house and they can basically devote their time to other activities rather than just looking for the house or living in a unhygienic conditions. So, again this is a ethical dilemma that whether we should go for infrastructure development project associated with SEZ and national gas processing plant or the welfare project. Then right based approach versus administrative discretion. Now here Ministry of Finance is given this direction that you should allocate 6,000 rupees, and even if it is required, go for reappropriation. This is administrative discretion which is given to the ministries. But again, can administrative discretion could be used against the right of the people, which give them the right to have the basic amenity of housing, which is being promised by the government and the politicians. So again, this is another ethical dilemma. Likewise, policy dilemma to prioritize welfare or this economic development project. So again, here we have to look into which thing need priority, whether this welfare project of construction of houses for weaker section or SEZ or gas basically processing plant. Likewise, energy security of a country. So it is said that gas grid connectivity is going to be improvised and we will have more energy security if this gas processing plant has been set up. But at the same time, can we sideline or ignore the basic amenity, that is housing for the weaker section? So these were some of the primary ethical dilemmas or ethical issues which arise in the mind when we look into that case study. So this will answer your first part of the question. Now again, you can elaborate just like what we have did for each of these ethical issues or dilemma, or you can have a general elaboration that this is a classic dilemma between welfare and growth. Again, it was believed that development would lead to trickle down effect, but many a times it is observed that it did not happen and weaker section remain weaker, rich becoming richer and poorer were becoming poorer. So later on it was thought that we should go for target based welfare scheme. But despite of that, if someone says or if someone suggests that reappropriate money to be allocated for the targeted based welfare scheme, how could you justify such kind of thing? Again, that is a dilemma. Likewise, you will find that reappropriation of fund meant for NHS to development of special economic zone in southern state for export promotion and PSU led national gas processing plant for regional gas grid to ensure national energy security by MNC. Now this SEZ as well as gas grid may be important from economic growth perspective of country, but often the interest of poor get sidelined or ignored. So NHS is essential aspect of equity and meaning developmental benefits or distribution of welfare benefits to every sections of the society. Thus, you have to find out a way to balance between both. Why? Because you cannot have a absolute view in such kind of situation where you allocate all the money 6,000 crores to the setup of SEZ as well as to payment of the multinational company. So again, and ignoring this NHS. So you should basically find a way out which is going to balance between both, because both are equally important. One cannot say that you can abandon the welfare project for the sake of these two developmental project, and one is also not supporting the idea that you should not pursue this developmental project because it is going to have a long term benefit for any country, and again only pursue the welfare project, right. So again, this is what answer for section A. Section B in this question was about the options available to Rajesh Kumar. What are the options available? Now, always in such kind of question, it is suggested that always start with the worst possible option which is going to be abandoned or not going to be followed in the later phase when we take a final decision. So, always start with the most basically ineligible form of suggestion which you are not going to follow, followed by some other suggestion, and finally the decision which you are going to or the option which you are going to take should be the last option given, because it will give a chronology or the flow to your answer, right. Now resigning from job, why we are mentioning this as an option in itself? Because it is being asked in the question itself, that is resigning an option, because this was a question asked that resigning worthy option. So that is why we are utilizing the questions or suggestion only, and we gave this as the most undesirable kind of option, but still we are going to write that resigning from a job basically is the easiest way possible, because you will get rid from these problems and trouble of basically consequences of decision. So if you take decision in favor of welfare project, your developmental project will get halted. If you take favor of developmental projects SEZ and gas grid, again it is going to be criticized by the politician as well as the weaker section of the society. So, in both cases you have to face criticism. So, it is better to get rid from that kind of trouble, you resign from the job. But again, by basically having a detailed elaboration, you can also mention that it is akin to escapist tendency. How come you are going to escape from your own responsibility, and it is highly unbecoming of an officer to get rid from such kind of thing just by resigning from the vocation. Again, this kind of challenges are always there in the life of a bureaucrat. Again, they have to manage and deal with that rather than running away from those challenges. So, this is not the appropriate option. So, this option would be least preferable or even not preferable at all. Then second option is diverting the fund. Diverting the fund meaning here it is being said that 6,000 crore for these two development project has to be provided, and for that reappropriation should be done. So, this is about diverting of the fund. So, again you can give the argument that this will ensure both SEZ project and National Gas Processing Plant would have sufficient fund to initiate their process. However, again this diversion would had impacted the projects of National Housing Scheme, where you are going to not have sufficient fund to proceed with that. Again, government and politician has promised this, and in parliament they might face embarrassing condition. So, again this is also not an option which is supposed to be preferred, because you are ignoring the need of marginalized section of the society at the cost of those developmental projects. Now, you can also have another option, which is do not divert the fund, continue with the same process and ignore the need of development of SEZ as well as National Gas Grid project. But again, it will lead to international embarrassment to country when they default on payment to the multinational company, and again it will dent the image of the country. Similarly, you can also find that SEZ project land acquisition process would further get delayed. So, again if it get delayed, we would not be in a position to initiate our export plan, and again it will not generate any employment, and again for long term developmental goal of country it is going to have adverse impact. So, again this option 2 is not preferable. So, what we are supposed to do? So, again try to balance between the limiting condition is the best way forward. Here what one can do, or what Rajesh Kumar can think of doing, is that budget reappropriation is done in a way that payment of first ranky to XYZ hydrocarbon made on time, so that it will save the country's reputation in terms of international payments or international commitment. Likewise, some funds should be allocated for SEZ project also, based on conditions of fulfillment of certain goals or targeted approach. So, you just get the targeted approach where you will focus on target bound fund allocation rather than allocating all together 6,000 crore for these two. You will go in a phased manner, and again majority of the fund that was allocated for NHS scheme should be there with a clause to release the fund in a phased manner. Again, NHS should not be kept unconditionally, rather you are going to have a phased basically allocation of fund based on completion of certain targets. So, in this way, this kind of budgeting, which is more focus on outcome or output based budgeting, is going to provide much basically relief in the reappropriation process of this fund, as well as it would not compromise on the development versus welfare kinds of basically needs of the people. So, again this will be the best case forward in this situation, where balance between economic growth initiative under SEZ and National Grid project with people's right and welfare, you have tried to balance it. It could be done with the help of better resource and budget management, ensuring allocation based on outcome or output based budgeting principle. Hence, the fourth option is the most appropriate. So, anyone could have this thought. Why it is also the better one? Because after allocation of 6,000 crores, still 15-25 crores are left. Even if we allocate 15-25 are left. But again, we are not saying allocate all 6,000 crores as being directed to the Ministry of Finance. Rather, even in that allocation, you will have some condition imposed that only if you fulfill this kind of condition, we are going to allocate this much of money or amount in your basically account. So it is going to have a targeted approach. Same will go for the welfare scheme. So at least you can manage for 1 to 3 years for this fund basically requirement, as well as it is going to be a targeted one. So it will ensure that time bound deliveries and time bound fulfillment of target is made, right. So next is, so this is how you are going to proceed in this case. Again, this is going to be our modus operandi or way of answering this case studies. First, summarize the case study to an evaluator in every possible way which will require less number of words or less basically sentences. You will briefly, as brief as possible, you are going to summarize the case study, and then you will go for the stakeholder identification, ethical issues, and then what is being demanded in the question, so that our case study is going to cover the demand of the questions in its inclusivity, right. So that is how we are going to proceed. Now there is another question. Now it is about chairman of BML, that is Bharat Missile Limited. Again, in summary you can mention that it was a case where chairman of BML, who thought that government is not going for basically export of this anti-tank missiles, but again he get to know later on that anti-tank guided missile government is planning to have export to a friendly country and double the weapon export within the next 5 years. So again, impetus and boost to the indigenous defense manufacturing is going to follow if we are going to focus more on exporting of this, and again it will lead to exports of arm. So again, this was an entire case study in which they have asked, as a chairman of BML, what are your views on the following point. First point was, as an arm exporter of a responsible nation like India, what are the ethical issues involved, and second is, list 5 ethical factors that would influence the decision to sell the arms to foreign government. So these two are the ethical issues which might follow. Again you have to observe. So again, who are the stakeholders? So again, chairman of BML and its employee naturally are going to be the stakeholder or basically affected by this decision. Then government per se is going to affected both the Indian government or the government which is exporting the arms and the friendly country which is going to get these arms. Then the society at large, it is going to have ramification on society as well as its people. Why? Because you are going to export your arms to a friendly nation. It might earn you for an exchange, as well as the goodwill gesture is shown by the friendly country at the time of your need also, because you have provided them support in terms of their arms needs, right. So again, it will also boost your international reputation. Now what are the ethical issue involved? Again, this was arms trade associated ethical issues for a responsible country like India. So this is I'm sorry, this is answer to your first point, that what are the ethical issues involved. So again, here you will have to ensure protection of exported arms misuse. So again, what happen if you export this arm to a country which later on export it to some other country or some terrorist organization? So again, you have to have this clause of non-exporting of the arm which is being imported from India or this responsible nation like India, or even if they are supposed to export it, they should not basically going in the hands of terrorist organization or any organization which is threat to peace and stability at any part of the world. Then again, you have to look into the global disarmament movement. India was one who initiated this kind of movement where it support the idea of disarmament among the countries of the world, where no one will go for arm race. So what is going to be your position and stand if you yourself started exporting arm to the other nation? Again, you should also take into concern about the ethical issues which might follow regarding export of arm, that is the arm proliferation or increase in the arm proliferation in different part of the world. National and international peace and stability is another ethical issue of your concern. If you are exporting of arm to even a friendly nation, might create some kind of threat to international peace and stability. You must look into that. Then it should not initiate the arm race. So since you are exporting the arm to a friendly nation, your rival countries also will start similar thing, and ultimately it will keep on increasing, and finally it will trigger the race among the country to export and import more number of arms, which is not good for any countries and their peace and stability. Likewise, international ethics, especially the human rights. So again, what will happen if your friendly country is starting using these arms which you are exporting on its own people or against its own people? There is no guarantee so far, so you have to take care of such thing that your arms are not going to be misused in that way also against their own people. Likewise, the economic benefit, again the national interest lied in enlightened self-interest of the country. So here national interest of India is to get the foreign exchequer as well as increase the international reputation, and this is also taken into consideration that since we are working for the development of this anti-tank missile since long, so now we are basically reaping the benefit of it. There is no wrong in this, right? So again, we will look into that issue also. So these were the 6 or 7 ethical issues which were involved in a responsible country like India's arm trade to any foreign nation. Now, ethical factors that influence the decision making. What are the ethical factors? So these are the issues which might involve, but there are certain factors which is going to be prominent before exporting this arm to a friendly nation also. That is going to play an important role in our decision making. What are these? So first is India's national interest. Now, national interest of any country is associated with their enlightened self-interest. So what is self-interest of India? We will look into first. Is exporting this arm is in interest of India as a nation or not? We will look into that national interest of the country first. If it is not, no matter how much of money is being offered to us, we will not basically going to export those arms. But if it is in basically promoting the self-interest of the country, we should always go for such thing. Then India's policy toward the foreign government and their legitimate need. We will also need to look into what was the need of this friendly foreign country to ask for Indian arms and Indian basically assistance in this security issue. Are they having any immediate security threat? Are they surrounded by hostile neighbor, or they are having certain other basically motive to import this arm from India? So we will look into that also. Then it should be at par with international regulation. So again, no international arm trade could be conducted without following the international regulation. Otherwise, you would not get the sanctity of international organization in terms of export and import of these arms. So we should look into that whether it is under the guideline of international norms or not. Then combating regional and international terrorism and organized crime. How this actions of exporting of arm is going to deal with the issues of international terrorism and organized crime. Is it going to instigate or is it going to dissuade these kinds of activities in the region, nationally, internationally or regionally also? Then foreign government guarantees protection against its misuse. You should also take into consideration that your friendly country where you are exporting this arm will provide you guarantee or security that it is not going to be misused against their neighbor, misused against their own people, misused internationally. It should not be the case, right? So there will be some condition applied on that. India seeks to boost its arm export to reduce its dependency from the foreign country and becoming self-reliant in its defense need. So since there is no mention of Atmanirbhar Bharat here, we need not to incorporate our knowledge, but naturally if we are exporting arm, we want to have certain amount of self-sufficiency, and also we want to earn foreign exchequer because of this arm export. So again, these are generalistic things you can conclude in, you can write in conclusion. At the same time, as a responsible country, India would never engage into unethical arm trade with foreign government having dubious human right record, violation of international norms and poor track record in arm proliferation. So there is a difference between India and China in this scenario. China is known for violating the international norms and ethos when they go for exporting arms to countries like Pakistan and North Korea, who are known for their dubious human right record as well as their commitment to the international norm as well as the tracking of this record of this arm proliferation. As such, all these things are ignored by these countries. But China do not behave as an responsible international power, and this just look for its own vested interests, which should not be the case. India on the other hand would never resort to such kind of thing, and so far whichever country we have gone for exporting our arms, are those countries either they are least developed, in the part of least developed countries, or they are in need to strengthen or beef up their security, looking at their strategic condition or location, as well as their basically geographical compulsion to have such kind of security provisions in advance. So, again we are supposed to follow that in letter and spirit to ensure that our export is getting international sanction, as well as it would not seen as an attempt to aggression of basically foreign country, right. So, again these are the things we will keep in mind while exporting such arms. So, this is about your 8th case study. Then there is another question on case study about a village which is Rampura. Now, briefly I will just summarize the case and the demand of that case study. So, Rampura again is a remote district backward with tribal population, again having subsistence agriculture. So, agriculture is not very much basically prosperous there, rather it is only subsistent, meaning hand to mouth kind of situation is there. Then there are insignificant industries are there, inadequate target welfare programs are going on, leading to distress migration of youth including minor girl. And again various contractors, because the minor girls have this nimble finger or thin fingers, it is very good for extracting cotton from the cotton farm. So, again they were being hired by this contractor to a cotton farm. Again this had a poor working condition that might affect the health of minor girls. Since they are minor, they have certain health need, as well as the BT cotton plant itself might have certain basically poor working condition. Likewise, NGOs which are working over there, NGOs which are working over there had basically failed to deal with this twin problem. One is the child labor and other is the area development. Now, NGOs are being supported by various agencies including government, including the private enterprise in terms of their funding. Now, despite of many NGOs getting fund, it is observed that they remain ineffective in its operation or functioning. So, again this is also an area of concern. So, again you are given this charge or you are the district collector. Now, this is the given case study to you and you are appointed as a district collector of Rampura. You have to identify ethical issue involved, first part, then which specific step will you initiate to ameliorate the condition of minor girl of your district, second part, and to improve the overall economic scenario of the district. So, this case study is more like a general study question where some facts are already given to you. Again, on the basis of those facts, you can provide the answer to these 3 questions. But again, what we are going to do in this case study, first we will precisely give in briefest possible manner the summary of this case study. Then we will go for identification of stakeholders who are going to get impacted when you or any other agency is going to take decisions. So, first you are going to get impacted yourself because you are the district collector. It will basically might considered as a appreciated step if you ensure development of Rampura, otherwise it might be criticized also. So, you are a stakeholder, important stakeholder. Then local population of Rampura including the youth and minor girls who are living in that. Local population here refer to the majority of those tribal population along with other people. Likewise, the labor contractor who is hiring the minor girl, which is itself a illegal thing. Again, the local NGO which is very ineffective in its functioning, which is not going to help in the issues associated with child labor as well as area development, fail to deliver. So, these were the stakeholders. Now, what are the ethical issues concerned? Ethical issue or legal issue, one of that is child labor. Under Prevention and Prohibition of Child Labor Act 2016, the hiring of child labor in any kind of vocation is something which is illegal and invite punishment from the government. So, this is also an ethical issue. You should not hire child in such kind of labor activity. Similarly, corruptions. So, again if there is no corruption, why this district remain underdeveloped, and again there is, you can say, insignificant industrial and mining activity and targeted welfare programs have inadequate benefited the tribal population. If there is no corruption, it is not possible. So, again there was instances of corruption. Then neglect of regional development or development of this region. So, it is clearly seen that since this is having a backwardness in terms of its development, there is neglect shown by the authorities. Livelihood of the people of Rampura is also a ethical issue, because that forces them to send their children to other part to basically earn their livelihood. Exploitation of labor is also an ethical issue, along with health of minor girls. So these were the primary ethical issues of concern in this particular case. Now, this was your first question, where you have to identify the ethical issues involved. So you have identified ethical issue. Then what actions you are going to take to ameliorate the conditions of minor girls of your district. So actions you will write in the second part. Step to ameliorate the condition of the minor girls in the district. What step you are going to take? So strictly implementing the Child Labour Prohibition and Regulation Act and punishing the culprit who is responsible for initiating such kind of things in the region. Now, just by forcing the children's or the contractor not to hire children is not going to solve the problem, unless we provide them alternative livelihood opportunities. So again, implementation of targeted welfare programs which are dedicated for tribal regions or for the tribal communities. Likewise, various government schemes and initiative like Manrega, which is employment generation program, like Mudra Yojana, which provide interest free loan or collateral free loan to the people who want to start their own enterprise. Then another thing is, for the minor girl, it is very important to rehabilitate them. So after taking them from the control of the contractor who forced them to work under the BT cotton plant or BT cotton farms, you will ensure their rehabilitation under Ujjwala scheme. Now again, this is not the Prime Minister Ujjwala Yojana which is providing gas connection, rather it is an scheme for the women who are under distress due to illegal trafficking or some other basically issues. So it provides for rescue and relief along with rehabilitation of minor girl child under this scheme, right. So you will utilize this scheme to rehabilitate this minor girl, and at the same time you will focus on their education, specifically the vocational and skill development of the minor girls, so that they can earn their livelihood with the help of their skill, and they should not be basically forced to work in a farm as a laborer, right. Likewise, nutrition and healthcare to minor girls under the Poshan Abhiyan. Now again, adults and girls require certain nutritional support for their health needs, and again this is also an ethical issue, health of minor girl, which is of concern. So again, you will ensure that under Poshan Abhiyan you will provide them requisite nutritional or health care basically to these minor girls. Then what are the steps you are supposed to take under the overall economic scenario or in the district to improve that economic scenario? So first and foremost, promotion of developmental program, as it is said that there were ineffective targeted welfare or development programs. So you will try to improvise that, you will try to modify their implementation so that it will basically start functioning and giving result. Similarly, tribal welfare schemes implementation. Now government initiate from time to time various schemes specifically for the weaker section, and these are the targeted schemes, meaning they are meant specifically for targeting the population who are vulnerable and provide them certain kind of relief. So you will implement such kind of scheme. You will promote agro-based small scale industries that will provide employment to the local population. So we will try to promote such activities which is including small scale industries, the agro-based industry, the forest-based industry in the region, so that people will get employment there and then itself. Likewise, you will go for skill development of the population under Pradhan Mantri Kaushal Vikas Yojana. Likewise, agriculture development. So agriculture is subsistence, there might be some reason behind that. So again, you will try to ameliorate those reasons, because agriculture is basically the mainstay of the local population. So again, you will incorporate various kinds of basically benefits to agriculture which is provided by government from time to time, various kinds of subsidies, consolidation of land. If there is land which is acquired by one group of people which is higher in size, so you will distribute that land by applying the land ceiling and other legislation for reforming those land or agriculture areas. Likewise, promotion of tribal product under TriFed. So this is tribal basically cooperative for promotion of tribal products. So there are many tribal products which has high demand in the global market, and this could be done with the help of assistance from TriFed. Likewise, NGO regulation and its funding based on its work. So again, NGO is supposed to be accountable towards the welfare programs where they are participant. Many a times they receive heavy funding from government or various other private agencies. So they, rather than utilizing this fund for welfare project, used to siphon this fund off. So again, strict NGO regulation along with its funding only based on its outcome or work. Whatever work they are doing, that must be audited, that must be scrutinized, and further funding will be based on their previous work. Likewise, gather support from local MLAs and local MP to divert some of the fund to basically give some of the fund under the MP led or MLA led scheme to this particular region. So again, in this way, we can safely assume that problems associated with Rampura is going to be resolved, and it will move in the direction of more faster, inclusive and sustainable growth, right. Now, next case study is about you being presented as a municipal commissioner, having a reputation of being very honest and upright officer. Along with that, a huge multi-purpose mall is under construction in your city, in which large number of daily wage earners were also employed. Now, one night during monsoon, a big chunk of roof collapsed and ultimately causing the instant death of 4 laborers. Again, it includes 2 minors. Many more were seriously injured, requiring immediate medical attention. The mishap resulted in a big hue and cry in the city and forcing the government to institute an inquiry. Your preliminary inquiry suggests and reveal that a series of anomalies were there. One such anomaly was the material was of substandard quality. Along with that, despite the approved building permission only of one basement, there was an additional basement has been constructed. This was overlooked by the inspector who is supposed to basically inspect such kind of thing. Likewise, in your inquiry, you notice that construction of this mall was encroaching into the green belt of the region. Along with that, you find that permission of this construction of this mall was given by previous municipal commissioner, who is not only your senior but also your good friend, and professionally you have a very good rapport with him. Then prima facie, the case appeared to be nexus between widespread nexus of officials of municipal corporation and the builders. So it is a classic example of crony capitalism. Then your colleagues are putting basically pressure on you to go slow in the inquiry, and again the builder who is rich and influential happens to be the close relative of a powerful minister is also basically putting pressure on you. They were trying to persuade you to hush up the matter, promising you a fortune to do basically so. He also hinted that if this matter is not resolved at the earliest in his favor, there is basically a person or somebody in office who is waiting to file a case against you under POSH Act or case of sexual harassment. Now, here after having this case study, discuss the ethical issues involved in the case, what are the options available to you, and explain your selected course of action. So, whenever you encounter with such kind of case study, as we have already mentioned, quickly in a very brief manner, just summarize what is that case all about. So, again in a summary portion, basically you will present that you are an honest and upright officer, currently municipal commissioner of a large city. What happened? The collapse of under construction building resulting into death of 4 laborers including 2 minors, and many more were injured requiring medical attention. Similarly, there was a preliminary inquiry conducted by you where you find various anomalies like poor quality material which was used, then violation of building permission or building norms, as well as these norms were violated, overlooked by the building inspector. There was encroachment in the Greenbelt region also. Now, the permission for such kind of construction was given by previous municipal commissioner, who is also your senior and known to you or known to me as a good friend. Again, here you are going to address yourself as first person because this is what mentioned in the case study. Now, threat from the builder who is politically well connected with the offer of bribes and good fortune, or face the false harassment case, sexual harassment case by women employed in the office basically under POSH Act. Now, these were the facts of the matter. Now, who are the stakeholders or who are going to be impacted with any things you will do in favor or against or any kind of action taken in such kind of cases. So again, stakeholders are I as a municipal commissioner, naturally it is going to impact me as a municipal commissioner. Then builders of under construction building, again it is found in preliminary inquiry that substandard material was used, encroachment of green belt was observed, over construction without having permission basically of another basement. So builder is naturally considered to be one of the party who is supposed to be framed as guilty. Then labor families who basically had members died, along with that those who are injured, they are also the stakeholder in this decision. Finally, the previous municipal commissioner who is good friends of yours, again is also the stakeholder. Building inspector, employee of municipal corporation, again it will create an image of municipal commission, and again every employee is equally a stakeholder. Along with that, the state or union government which is there, and society at large, it has impact on entire society, right. Now these are the stakeholders who get influenced or affected by any action taken in this case. Now ethical issues involved in this. So this was the first part of your question, discuss the ethical issues involved in the case. So first ethical issue is about the presence of crony capitalism. Crony capitalism is a kind of economic system which breeds the unholy nexus between the entrepreneurs who are engaging into unethical business as well as the political bureaucratic community or class, right. So it is an unholy nexus between politician, bureaucrat with businessman. So again both work for their vested interest and support each other, and that is what resulted into crony capitalism, a negative basically impression about capitalism. Then ethical issue was violation of buildings and norms basically associated with building laws. So again this is ethically wrong if someone is violating the rule of law itself. Then integrity, impartiality and non-partisanship, you are basically supposed to take decision based on integrity, based on impartiality and non-partisanship. So ethical issue is involved when you are going to give your preliminary report as well as your investigation report. Then objectivity, dedication to public service and empathy. Again here the report should be objective rather than it is going to convict builder or your senior IAS officer who is predecessor to you as a municipal commissioner who gave this decision, or it is going to basically do any favor to them. It must be objective. Then dedication to public service and empathy. Impression should not goes into the mind of people that such kind of thing are put behind the or put inside the carpet. So again you should show some certain kind of empathy and dedication to the public services regarding such kind of things. Then tolerance and compassion toward the weaker section. Again accountability, ethical governance, information sharing and transparency in government, corruption, interpersonal relationship within the senior and junior bureaucrat or other official. So these were the ethical issues which might get involved in this particular case. Now you can choose to elaborate these ethical issues, how they are important in this particular case, or you can just mention that in your answer. Now what are the options available to me in this case? So again just follow what is being said by builder, and it is going to help me again in my good fortune in future, and it is going to sustain my relationship with the previous municipal commissioner who is good friend of mine, and again nobody will basically get much basically problem if, in terms of those builder as well as the person who are working in municipal corporation. But again it will be breaking the trust of people of the society who repose their trust on the people who are working as a officer to protect their interest. Also it is undermine the ideals of justice and akin to evading my responsibility as an officer. If I am being the officer who is known for his honesty and uprightness, this is something which will haunt me for life, and again this guilt is attached that when I was supposed to take the just action, I evade from my responsibility. So that is something which is basically not a decision which one could think of, because this is running away from responsibility. Second possible course of action would be withdrawing from an investigation. Many a time it is observed that many people who do not want to trouble their life, who do not want to trouble their career, prefer to withdraw from investigation. In that scenario, neither you have done anything favorable toward the builder or the biasness shown in the report, nor you have done justice in this case. So, it is a kind of middle path which is adopted by many of the bureaucrats. But again, even in that situation, this reflects the escapist mindset. Today you have withdrew from this investigation. What will happen if some other place you are posted and same incident occur? Until how long you are going to have this escapist mindset is again basically a question which need to be answered. As a public servant, you basically come across such kind of cases time and again in your career. So again, rather than evading from this, it will be against the virtue of deontological ethics. Again, rather than evading from this, the better way is to take some actions or to do what is being just and what is going to be objective, right. So again, this is not an acceptable basically course of action. Then unbiased and fair inquiry. Again, while taking this action in the form of unbiased and fair inquiry, you will ensure objectivity as well as the dedication to public services with this action. It will deliver justice to the people, those who are injured, and especially families of those who were basically died in this mishap. Similarly, there were threats which were issued to you on the part of that particular builder. Now, these threats are part and parcel of life of a public servant. Now, you have to deal with that with your basically inner strength, in the sense that if you know, if you have not done something wrong, no one can hurt you, right, in a wrong manner. So, you know that there is one case of harassment pending, or there is one case which is waiting. If you do not agree with the builder, possibly this case would be imposed against you. So, even in that case, there will be a fair inquiry, and ultimately you know you have not done anything wrong. So, there is nothing to get afraid of. Lastly, you can say it will set a good precedent before the future civil servant or public officers, that this is how you should deal with such kind of situation. So, based on this kind of analysis, we can say that the third course of action is the most appropriate and best suited for this situation, that ensure accountability, transparency in investigation, and break the unholy nexus between the politician, bureaucrat and the businessman. This will also provide justice to the families of labor who lost their life and reposed people faith in the administration. So again, this would be your concluding remark. The next question is about a place where you will find that it is underdeveloped district having not suitability for agriculture because of its rocky terrain. Despite having irrigation and adequate rainfall, it is not suitable for agriculture. Now, this Parmal is an underdeveloped district. Its headquarter is Amriya, where there is an industrial training institute, then skill training center and a district hospital with poor connectivity. Now, it is also given that state government has already provided a 10-year tax holiday for new industry to start or set up in this region to basically motivate the industrialists to start their industry in such areas. Anil and industrialists set up Amriya Plastic Work in one place called as Noora village, 20 km away from Amriya. Again, before the factories got built, structure is prepared, he ensured that he hired some people and ensure they are being trained before basically factory were constructed. So again, this make these people very loyal toward the Amriya Plastic Work industry. Now, APW started production in 2011 and it meet the production target, and again with high quality and motivated workforce, it was in a position to do so. Also, they have started hiring people locally rather than taking it from some other places. So, it makes the people very happy that they are getting employed from the same region. Government with APW support basically open primary healthcare center for the health as well as primary school. Local MLA also basically in nexus with APW started increase the bus services from Amriya to other places. So, it will increase the connectivity. APW also use CSR funding to set up women's self-help group, subsidize primary education to the village children and procure ambulance for any needy person and the villagers. Similarly, In 2019, there was a minor fire in this APW, and later on it was basically controlled and rectified. In investigation, it was observed that it is due to the technical glitch, and there was basically utilization of the power by APW than its authorized capacity. During this lockdown, all employees were regularly paid, and APW basically utilized their labor for tree plantation and improving the village habitat. Now, based on this, we have to basically critically analyze APW and the state of ethical issues involved in this entire case. Along with that, we have to basically also analyze that whether APW is considered as a role model for the development of backward areas or backward regions in the country. So, again we have to answer this question in two parts. First is about the critical analysis of basically the entire case involving ethical issues, as well as we have to observe whether this model which APW has presented can be replicated in other backward regions also. So, who are the stakeholders involved in this? So, Anil, an entrepreneur who start APW in the village, local population of Amriya, Parmal and Noora village, all are getting benefit. Then government that provide tax holiday to new industries in the region, then society as a large. So, again in this critical analysis could be made by saying that APW indicate a sign of ethical driven organization that use the available resources and labor force for its enterprise. Similarly, Anil, who is owner of APW, shows the image of compassionate capitalism, where capitalism understood that their basically growth is associated, linked with the growth of the society. If you are making some produce, if you are making some product, people will only able to buy it when they have sufficient resources. So, your growth as an enterprise depend on the societal growth as well. So, they are both interlinked. Similarly, skill development of local population and their high morale leading to meeting the production target was something which was the vision showed by Anil. Before the industry gets set up, he has ensured that he already get the skilled labor which are locally basically based. Likewise, APW bring prosperity, boost greenery as well as renovated village temple. Social consciousness of APW enterprise reflected with its CSR activity to set up self-help group for women, then subsidized primary education for the children and ambulance service for every employee as well as the needy people. A small glitch in operation, that is overloading electricity, then authorized capacity led to minor fire in APW that was rectified soon. So, this was also an ethical issue involved in this, or critical basically thing which should not have been done or should have been avoided. Then ethical and environmental consciousness during the lockdown, rather than keeping those labor idle and paying them, they have utilized those labor in environmentally productive activity in terms of planting the trees as well as improving the habitation. So, again in all this critical basically things, we observed that there are certain ethical issues which are involved in entire case study, which is ethics in public and private relation. How you can manage this ethics in public and private relations. Then dedication to public services, empathy, tolerance, compassion toward the weaker section. Now, like many entrepreneurs of the country, Anil could have evaded this responsibility of non-payment or not paying to the employees because there was production fell due to lockdown. But again, he preferred to choose another path where he continued to pay and earn the loyalty of all those laborers or workers who are working for APW. Likewise, work culture, quality of service delivery. Again, since the laborers were driven by high morale and they were already trained, they will provide the high quality products, as well as the work culture was more like cooperative rather than conflicting. Similarly, integrity, impartiality and non-partisanship. Rather than behaving in a biased manner, APW had provided various kinds of funding support, various kinds of financial support to various activities associated in the village. Social influence and persuasion, where people also get the influence from such kind of welfareist orientation by APW. They were persuaded, MLAs were persuaded, government were persuaded to provide more connectivity in the form of bus services to the Amriya place. Then inclusive characteristic of organization, health, education, women empowerment, environment consciousness, all are being attempted by APW through various initiatives. Wage payment during pandemic despite decline in production is again an ethical basically form of capitalism. So these were some of the ethical issues which were involved in this case. Also the question is about whether we should replicate this model or whether there were APW to be considered as a role model for entire or for the development of backward region of the country. So one can believe, and there are strong reason to believe, that APW show a robust model of private sector led growth which utilized the government incentive, which was the 10-year tax holiday, creating a win-win condition for everyone. Similarly, many backward regions of India have the same story. They do not have the prosperous agriculture, mostly they are having subsistence agriculture where labor force has to migrate to some other place for working and earning. This could be replicated in major part of the country having same kind of situation. Similarly, APW led by example how private sector can fill the gap which is left by the state. It ensures the welfare of people even in small village by transforming their life. APW ensure best utilization of local resources. Again, they could have hired the laborer from the other regions also, but again this would be troublesome for those people also to stay in such remote locations. So they prefer to skill the local population and utilize them for the work and provide them requisite skills and ensure inclusive development. Then APW model also take care of various problems like migration, like education, like health, like local employment generation in the village. Similarly, APW presented a ethical and social environment conscious organization picture focused on the overall growth of the place and not just their own profit. So again, this shows a completely different picture of what is being portrayed of any enterprise in any basically media report or any basically picture imagined by anyone. So again, this is totally different. But again, we have to understand here that it is not something which is going to be one size fit all approach. APW may be suitable for a place called Noora village or Amriya or Parmal, but perhaps this kind of model has its own basically restriction or limitation. So reasons for APW not to be seen as a role model to be replicated in other backward areas of the country is because every backward area has its own unique issue. It is not always the same case. Implementing APW model everywhere is akin to one size fit all approach, which is never seen successful in many of the previous policy and plans implemented in the country. Likewise, some backward region would require more government support rather than private sector initiative. So tax holiday and private sector initiative would not be very much sufficient. Every private enterprise may not have APW or Mr. Anil like ethos that basically would help in the prosperity of the region, and possibility of this unchecked entrepreneurship activities will result into exploitation of natural resource also possible. Despite enterprise being socially conscious, it's unfair to expect them to provide affirmative actions, which is actually the responsibility of the government or the state. Hence, in this regard, you can say that the best way forward is to strengthen the model of mixed economy which we are following, and again to ensure proper participation of public and private sector, where public sector or the government provide the requisite atmosphere or ambience in which private basically enterprise can function under regulated conditions. So that will be a best case forward in such kind of cases, right? Next is about the migrant worker. It is associated with the migrant crisis. This is directly taken from the present cases, and again you will find that migrant workers were having various issues due to this nationwide lockdown. So again, just summarize this story in front of basically evaluators so that they need not to go through again the whole basically lengthy case study. So in this, there was large number of migrant labor who decided to move toward their native village. Why? Because they are not having anything to do. Industries were closed because of lockdown. So non-availability of transport, hunger and inconvenience to the family makes them mentally stressed and again force them to demand wage and transport facility. Lackadaisical responses of some district authority multiplied their basically problems or fear. Now you are being tasked to oversee the functioning of district disaster relief force in your district, right. So, in this you have learned many lessons from this. You are being asked to oversee such and the district disaster relief force. So, again the question is, what do you understand by an ethical care giving state? What assistance can civil society render to mitigate the suffering of migrant laborer, and in your opinion what are the ethical issues arose in the current migrant crisis? So, this is a clear straightforward question which you can address. First ethical issues due to this current migrant crisis are basically right to health and dignified life. By virtue of being born as a human being, every human being is having entitlement for a dignified life and proper health care. Now, this was something which is a concern for everyone during COVID-19 pandemic, and because this migrant laborers started moving toward their native village, possibility of spread of virus to the rural area where there is no health infrastructure present was very high, and that is the reason that initially government was very reluctant, but later on they acknowledged this fact that there is no point in keeping them locked in the city where they have nothing to basically do and except working and earning. Similarly, another ethical issue involved is about the food and job security. Most of our labor force in the country, approximately 94% of them are still involved in unorganized sector where there is no job security. During lockdown, many people faces food basically issues also, or issues associated with food security also. So, this is another ethical issue. Every human being is entitled, not just human being, every living entity is entitled to have proper food, and that is what basically denied to them because of this lockdown. Then unorganized sector worker and their uncertain nature of work is also one ethical concern. Government has to initiate various schemes like Atal Pension Yojana and other basically social security scheme to take care of such basically organized sector worker. Likewise, non-availability of transport facility and no immediate government assurance. Now, this was a time when rumors were spreading like a wildfire, but even in that situation, government do not take quick action which is supposed to be taken so that subdue such kind of rumor mongering. Then, public services values like dedication to public services, empathy and compassion to the weaker section found absent among many people as well as the bureaucrats who allow or who do not support the movement of people from one place to another in that basically lockdown situation. Likewise, emotional intelligence and attitude toward problem solving was also found to be missing in many regions of the country where migrant laborers keep on suffering. Likewise, duty of the state and agency to provide adequate prompt service toward the need of migrant labor was also another ethical concern. Now, it asks a question about meaning of ethical caregiving state. So, again ethical caregiving state is based on idea of ethics of care which look forward for the welfare of everyone, and it is based on benevolence as virtue. Again here it basically ensure that individuals are being taken care of, and in this situation we found that government, both union as well as state government, come to the rescue of migrant laborers and everyone who was in distress condition due to this lockdown in many ways. For example, Government of India has allowed utilization of National Disaster Response Fund for arrangement of the food and shelter to all these migrants. Similarly, government has issued sweeping orders to landlords not to take the rent as well as the employer not to basically deduct the wage from this basically laborers. Government also announces the basically national migrant information system for smooth movement of these migrants. Likewise, government set up thousands of camps to house lakhs of immigrants or lack of migrant and stop their exodus. Likewise, central government permitted Indian Railways Shramik special trains for migrant workers later on to basically reach their destination. Various direct benefit transfer and step for food security has been taken. Along with that, Garib Kalyan Rozgar Abhiyan, meaning merging of 25 different schemes to ensure that when this migrant laborer reaches home, they will have certain occupation, certain work to do. So, these were some of the things which government of both state and the center had done to indicate that they are having ethical care giving state. So again, usually it is observed that the ethical care is absent in the time of crisis among various basically parts of the world, especially from the government side. But here government has tried its level best to ensure that people, even if there is limited resources, would be served well. Then there was also a question related to role of civil society, what they could have done. So again, they could have supported in boarding and lodging facility. Likewise, food and transport facility they would have arranged. Then mask, sanitizer and PPE kit distribution could be basically done by this civil service society organization for to the needy people. Then raising voice for the voiceless at different platform, including differently able, LGBTQ community, migrant laborers, sex workers and poor could be done. Then rescue and relief to people who basically need support. So all these things were supposed to be done by civil society organization, and again we have seen various examples of this done by various civil society organization. For example, Rotary Club of Mumbai alone distributed and served 60 lakh hot meals and food across Mumbai, Palghar and Thane. Likewise, Youth for Unity and Voluntary Action, YUVA, which is a non-profit organization, had basically distributed 8 lakh cooked meal to the frontline workers. Likewise, Ankuram, which is a Hyderabad NGO, ensure that this migrant labor found accommodation and food and water. Goonj organization in Karnataka delivered 8 lakh kg of ration and along with that provided 1.4 lakh meal, basically hot meal served during the lockdown period. So you can say that migrant laborers are silent contributor to the urban ecosystem and economy. They are neither identified nor they are appreciated. This widespread public empathy for the migrant laborer was also short-lived. Why? Because their social marginalization in the city is the direct result of their inability to pervade the public consciousness as equal citizens. So again, here the migrant laborer crisis due to COVID pandemic raised the need to have more inclusive urban policies that recognize and include migrant laborers also. So this was also a time for dwelling that whether we can have an urban policy which provide the equal footing to everyone who is staying in urban area, whether they are the resident or they are the migrant laborer who are there for temporary duration. So again, this is what we have to basically write in our concluding remarks. So that is all from our side. Thanks a lot for watching. Have a wonderful day.